Hi, how you doing? And welcome back to a video on the channel. And the title does not lie. I currently have a rank of just outside 21k. It puts me in the top 0.2% of all FPL managers and is my highest ever rank in the whole history of my FPL career. So if you want to keep track of my team and how we're doing for the rest of the season, please do like and subscribe. It's greatly appreciated, especially on such a small channel. And we are trying to get to 100 subscribers throughout the course of the season. So thanks for all the support so far from everyone. Hopefully, we can keep it going. So let's take a look at my team in game week 10 and how we did. So as you can see on the right, 86 points for the game week, which was always a really good points tally for any game week. But this week it took me from 80k to about 21k. And my transfer for the game week was I brought in Simicast for Lamptey and moved Lascelles to the bench, and Liverpool kept the clean sheet. I obviously got pretty lucky because someone like Matty Cash say, kept a clean sheet and got taken off before Villa conceded, but actually got 5 points from Cash instead of one. And there were players that I brought in on a wild card a couple of weeks ago, like Diaby, and I took out Mbuemo, and I was umming and ahhing about Diaby or Mbuemo. And on Saturday, Mbuemo got a goal and assist. I was like, Diaby hasn't really done anything for me so far. And then he went and got a goal and assist and matched Mbuemo's 13 points on Sunday, which was fantastic. Captain Erling Haaland, which is always going to be a good decision in my opinion. We have talked in previous videos about why I would always captain Erling Haaland, especially early on in the season, is really down to the ownership. So for me, if I captained someone like Son or Salah ahead of Haaland, if Haaland did outscore those players, so many more people are going to have captained Haaland just because they own him. And yeah, sometimes Salah might outscore Haaland, but I'm less likely to fall behind in the ranks because of the ownership or lack of ownership compared to Haaland with someone like Salah or Son. So that's kind of the reasons, and it might sound a bit negative or a bit scared, but it's really kind of just playing the percentages and the ownership, especially early on in the season when the rankings and the point splits are so close. And it's funny because we always said at the start of the season, like, "Oh, let's see how we are at game week 10." Everything's so close together. Don't really want to sort of pay attention to the rank till about game week 10. And we're at game week 10, and it's my highest ever rank. So it's funny in that respect, but there's still so much football to be played. I'm not getting ahead of myself. I'm just trying to hang on to this rank for as long as I can, and who knows, maybe even improve it further. So yeah, hopefully you guys are doing well in your teams as well. Let's take a look at the fixtures. So the fixtures for game week 11 are as follows, and it's a pretty good game week to be honest. Like there's a lot of 3 o'clock kickoffs on Saturday, and there is a Saturday morning deadline as opposed to a Friday night, which gives you a bit more time this week to think about your team. The main fixtures for me in terms of captaincy are Man City at home to Bournemouth and Liverpool away at Luton. Now, if Haaland didn't exist, I'd say Captain Salah. He is the obvious standout for this game week. But as we've just discussed, like I just think you should captain Haaland at least until, about game week 25 onwards, to be honest, unless there's some sort of injury that happens in the meantime. I just don't really see the need to move away from him. I think there's enough um, points that could be made in the rest of your team's decisions that could gain rank rather than taking a load of risks with your captaincy, especially if Man City have a good fixture. The Spurs Chelsea game and the Newcastle Arsenal game are also standout fixtures. I think the Newcastle Arsenal game is probably going to be a lot tighter than the Spurs Chelsea game, mainly because of Chelsea's defending. But also, Newcastle Arsenal, I can see that being 1-0 to either side or 2-0. There's not really going to be much in it. Whereas Spurs Chelsea, I could see a 2-all, 3-2, something like that. So that fixture does seem to be, a lot more open, and I would be really happy if I owned Son and or Madison for that game. So my team going into game week 11 are as follows, and I also have two free transfers, but I only have zero point 0.5 million in the bank. So I don't really want to spend two transfers when the team is looking good. But I also don't really need to spend two transfers either. There's not really anyone that I would want to upgrade who is quite pricey. The only players that I would want to look at upgrading would be the cheap players on the bench, but I don't really have enough money in the bank to upgrade to anyone significant, and I could get more funds by selling, say, Onana, but he has Fulham, Luton, and Everton in the next three, and I kind of hung on to him for those fixtures. If I was going to take Onana out, I would have done it before they played teams like Man City. Um, and to be fair, I don't really feel like there's any real need, any areas that need addressing. But there's always improvements to be made, and I think you've got to balance like a good team with not getting too slack and being proactive and looking at where there's areas to improve. Salah and Son aren't coming out unless there's an injury. So I think if they were to get a serious injury, which obviously we hope nobody happens to any player, um, I'd get their money back as well. I'd get their transfer funds back, and then I could use that to upgrade the rest of the team. So I don't really see a problem with having lots of transfer funds tied up in a few players because it's quite easy to move off those players if it was required. I think the teams to target, other than the obvious, would be teams like Brighton and West Ham. And I know they're not in the best form right now, but good fixtures creates good form, and it's important to try and get in there early with a couple of players. Like we said, like you do want your high owned players, but it is absolutely fine, and I would recommend it to use one or two places in your starting 11 to have these players that nobody else is really either looking at or they've not got on yet, and that's how you'll gain your points on other people. So West Ham have Brentford, Forest, Burnley, Palace, Fulham, and Wolves in the next eight, and Brighton have Everton, Sheffield United, Forest, Chelsea, Brentford, and Burnley in the next six. So both those teams have good fixtures. Um, I'd have liked to have upgraded Lascelles if I had the choice to a West Ham defender, but I'm just short on the money. He's worth 4 million now, but I got him in at 3.9, so I don't really have the amount of transfer funds to upgrade from 3.9 to a West Ham defender that I would want in. But also Lascelles is still playing. I think Botman's out till about mid-November. So there's not an emergency in that regard to get, I've got a player on the bench who is still playing. I also quite like Adringra from Brighton. He's a Brighton midfielder, but he's also just out of my price range. But whoever I get in will start as bench cover anyway, so it's not necessarily the biggest issue. I just could do with someone, I think, if I had to make a change, who could guarantee me 2 points, basically, which sounds so minimal, but when the ranks are so close, you'd rather have 2 points than 0 points. So out of the cheap midfielders, Nakamba at Luton has played the most minutes, and he's only 4.4 mil. So he's cheaper than any other similar player that have played similar minutes. So I still leave me with some money in the bank if needed. And that looks like the move for now, to be honest, to get in Nakamba for Chukwuemeka. But if you see something else in my team that you think that is a player that I've missed, or if I've got a player in my team that you think I should transfer out, let me know. Likewise, if you've got any questions about your own team as well, it's always interesting to hear how other players are doing in FPL. And if you ever want to bounce any ideas off me, leave any comments or questions in the comment section. That'd be great to see as well. Just a last bit of advice from me would be to try and stay consistent. So we talked about captain Haaland consistently, and move it, but move early if you need to. I think, like we said, Brighton and West Ham for me are looking good for the future, but don't go chasing points. I think a classic example for me is Ollie Watkins. So I had Ollie Watkins from the start of the season. I think he got 4 assists in his first 4 game weeks, but hadn't scored any goals and actually dropped down to 7.9 million. And then he started hitting the back of the net. But whilst he wasn't scoring, I wasn't too fussed because he was still getting attacking returns and the goals were probably going to come anyway. Whereas, if you sort of react to him getting 3 goals and 2 assists in a game and say, right, I need Watkins in now, it's like, yeah, he will still score, but he's not going to get 3 goals and 2 assists every game week. So I think it's about not chasing points and keeping your expectations in check from what you actually want from your team. And can you then see, um, you know, likelihood of point scoring in the future? I think it's a balance between having um, high owned players and then some risky picks as well, or high upside picks rather than risky picks. So, yeah, let me know what you think. Please do like and subscribe. The support is greatly appreciated. Hopefully, we can keep the rank going as long as we can throughout the season, and I will see you in the next one.